The first time Sarah Martinez heard her call sign, she was hovering 50 feet above the Helmand River Valley with bullets tearing through the fuselage like angry hornets. It was July 2016, her second tour in Afghanistan, and she'd been flying Black Hawks for exactly 18 months. "Falcon, you've got 2 RPGs inbound from your 6 o'clock. The voice of her crew chief, Sergeant Danny Ortiz, crackled through her headset with barely controlled panic. Sarah didn't flinch. Her hands moved across the controls with surgical precision, banking the $30 million aircraft hard left while simultaneously dropping altitude. The rocket-propelled grenade screamed past where her helicopter had been half a second earlier, exploding harmlessly against a cliff face. "How copy, Falcon?" That was Marcus Chen, her co-pilot, his voice steady despite the chaos. She didn't remember responding. She just flew, threading the Black Hawk through a narrow canyon at speeds that made Marcus grip his harness, her eyes scanning the terrain with an intensity that earned her the call sign in the first place. Like a falcon hunting prey, her squadron commander had said, "She sees everything before anyone else does." That mission became legend. 12 Special Forces operators extracted from a hot landing zone during a sandstorm with zero visibility, one engine failing, and enemy forces closing from 3 sides. The after-action report called it textbook flying under impossible conditions. The video footage became required viewing at Fort Rucker, but what they didn't show in training sessions was what came after. They didn't show Sarah sitting alone in her quarters at 3 a.m., hands shaking so badly she couldn't hold a water glass. They didn't show the nightmares where she watched her Black Hawk spiral into the ground over and over, the screams of her crew echoing in the darkness. They didn't show her flinching at thunderstorms, her body remembering the percussion of explosions even when her mind knew she was safe. By her third tour, Sarah Martinez had flown 487 combat missions. She had 2 distinguished flying crosses, a Purple Heart from the time shrapnel tore through her shoulder during an extraction, and a reputation that made young pilots nervous when she walked into a briefing room. She was 29 years old and already being called one of the best combat pilots the Army had ever produced. She was also falling apart. "You're done, Falcon," her squadron commander, Colonel Patricia Hendricks, had told her in September 2018, not unkindly. They were sitting in Hendricks's office at Bagram Airfield, the colonel's eyes showing the same weariness Sarah saw in her own mirror every morning. "You've given everything. You've earned the right to go home." "I don't know who I am without this," Sarah had admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Hendricks leaned forward. "Then it's time to find out." 3 weeks later, Sarah took her final flight out of Afghanistan. Marcus Chen, who'd flown beside her for 3 years, gripped her shoulder as they walked across the tarmac. "Once a Falcon, always a Falcon," he said. "That doesn't change just because you're taking off the uniform." Sarah had smiled and nodded, believing that chapter of her life was closing forever. She had no idea how prophetic his words would be. Montana had seemed like another planet at first. Sarah had grown up in El Paso, gone straight into the Army at 18, and spent her entire adult life in the cockpit or on military bases. The silence of the wilderness was deafening. No rotor blades, no radio chatter, no missions. Just mountains, snow, and endless sky. She'd met Jake Thompson at a veteran support group in Billings. He was a carpenter, a former Marine who'd served in Fallujah and understood the weight of memories without needing them explained. Their first date was a disaster. Sarah had a panic attack when a car backfired, diving behind a truck while Jake talked her down with the calm patience of someone who'd been there himself. Their second date was better. By the third, Sarah was laughing again, a sound she'd almost forgotten she could make. They married 6 months later at a tiny church with a view of the Rockies. Marcus flew in from Fort Campbell to be her best man. "You found your landing zone," he'd told her during their dance. "Now you get to build something instead of just surviving." Emma arrived in 2017, a tiny, screaming bundle of life that terrified Sarah more than any combat mission ever had. How was she supposed to keep this fragile human alive when she could barely keep herself together? But holding her daughter for the first time, Sarah felt something shift inside her. A new mission, a new purpose. Lily followed 2 years later, just as fierce and fearless as her older sister. Sarah traded her flight helmet for diaper bags, her tactical briefings for bedtime stories. She learned to braid hair, to kiss scraped knees, to chase giggles instead of insurgents. The nightmares came less frequently. The hypervigilance faded. Most days, Sarah could walk past the framed photo of her Black Hawk crew without feeling like she'd abandoned her family. Most days, she believed she'd made the right choice. Her old radio equipment sat in the garage, buried under camping gear and Christmas decorations. Jake had offered to throw it out a dozen times. "You don't need it anymore," he'd said. But Sarah could never bring herself to get rid of it. Some part of her, the part that would always be Falcon, needed to know it was there, just in case. In case of what? Jake had asked, genuinely curious. Sarah hadn't had an answer. She just shrugged and changed the subject, believing she'd never need to explain. Believing her flying days were truly over. Believing that the warrior she'd been could peacefully coexist with the mother she'd become. She had no idea that in 5 years, on the worst night of her life, that old radio would be the only thing standing between her daughter and death. She had no idea that the call sign she thought she'd left behind would become the 2 words that saved her family. Once a Falcon, always a Falcon. Marcus had been right all along. March 14, 2023, started with pancakes. Emma sat at the kitchen table, syrup dripping down her chin, chattering about the butterfly project she was doing for first grade. Lily was more interested in building towers with her pancake pieces than eating them. Sarah stood at the stove, flipping another batch, watching the early morning sun paint the Montana peaks gold and thinking that this ordinary, sticky, chaotic morning was everything she'd ever wanted. Jake came downstairs, already dressed in his work jacket, truck keys jingling in his hand. "Storm's supposed to hit around 2, he said, kissing Sarah's forehead. "Figure I'll grab supplies in town before it gets bad. We need more firewood and the generator's been acting up. Want me to pick up anything else?" Sarah glanced out the window. The sky was clear, crystalline blue stretching forever. "Maybe grab some medicine. Emma's been sniffling, and you know how fast these things spread." "On it." Jake ruffled Emma's hair, making her giggle. "You ladies hold down the fort. I'll be back by dinner." "Be careful," Sarah called as he headed for the door. Jake turned, grinning. "It's just a spring snow, babe. Montana throws these at us twice a month. I'll be fine." The door closed behind him. Sarah heard his truck engine rumble to life, then fade as he drove down the long driveway toward the county road. She watched until the dust settled, a small knot of unease forming in her stomach that she couldn't explain. By noon, the sky had changed. Sarah noticed it first while hanging laundry. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees in an hour. The blue sky was retreating, pushed back by clouds the color of old bruises. They rolled over the mountains like a living thing, swallowing the peaks, moving faster than any weather system she'd ever seen. "Girls, inside now," Sarah called, her voice sharp with command, the tone she'd used to give orders over hostile territory. Emma looked up from the sandbox. "But Mommy, we just came out." "Now, Emma." Something in Sarah's voice made both girls move without arguing. They were inside when the first snowflakes fell at 1:47 p.m. Not the gentle, lazy flakes of a normal snowfall. These came down hard and fast, like frozen bullets fired from above. Sarah tried calling Jake. The call went straight to voicemail. She told herself it was nothing. Cell service in the mountains was always spotty. She busied herself checking their supplies. Firewood stacked and dry, pantry stocked, generator tested. All good. They'd weathered storms before. By 3 p.m., she couldn't see the barn. The world outside the windows had disappeared into a whiteout so complete it was like looking into television static. The wind howled like something alive and angry, shaking the house's frame, making the girls huddle closer to Sarah on the couch. "When's Daddy coming home?" Lily asked, her small voice nearly lost in the storm's roar. "Soon, baby, soon." But Sarah's military training was screaming warnings. This wasn't a normal storm. The speed, the intensity, the way the temperature was plummeting, this was catastrophic. At 4:37 p.m. her phone rang. Sarah lunged for it. "Jake." Sarah listened, his voice cut in and out through static. "Bridge is gone, road washed out, can't." "Jake, you're breaking up, where are you?" "Fire station in town, safe but stuck, can't get home, are you?" "We're fine, stay where you are, don't try to." The line went dead. Sarah tried calling back. Nothing. She tried again. The call wouldn't connect. She checked her signal, one bar flickering, then gone completely. She ran to the landline, picked it up. Silence. Not even a dial tone. The storm had taken the phone lines down. "Mommy," Emma's voice was small and scared. "Is Daddy okay?" Sarah forced her face into a smile she didn't feel. "Daddy's safe in town, sweetheart. He's just going to have a sleepover at the fire station until the roads are clear. It's like an adventure." "I want Daddy," Lily whimpered. "I know, baby, I know." At 5:43 p.m. the lights flickered. Once, twice. Sarah grabbed her flashlight just as the house plunged into darkness. The girls screamed. "It's okay, I've got light right here." Sarah flicked on the flashlight, illuminating their frightened faces. "This is exciting. It's like camping indoors." She got the wood stove going, the flames pushing back some of the darkness. She lit oil lamps they kept for emergencies. She made hot chocolate on the camp stove, turning it into a game, telling stories to keep the girls distracted from the monster raging outside. But Sarah's mind was racing through calculations. They were 15 miles from town. The road was a narrow mountain path even in good weather. If the bridge was out and the road was washed out, no one was getting through, not ambulances, not rescue vehicles, not anyone. The snow was falling at a rate that would bury the road completely in hours. They were alone. She checked the thermometer outside the kitchen window, -15 degrees and dropping. The house, well insulated and heated by the wood stove, stayed warm enough. They had food for weeks. Water from the well still worked. They could survive this. Sarah fed the girls dinner by lamplight, gave them baths in water heated on the wood stove, tucked them into bed with extra blankets. She sang lullabies until they fell asleep, Emma's small hand clutching her stuffed rabbit, Lily's thumb in her mouth. Then Sarah sat alone by the wood stove, listening to the storm try to tear her home apart, and let herself feel the fear she'd been hiding all day. They were cut off from the world. No phone, no power, no way out. Jake was safe but might as well have been on another planet. If something went wrong, if someone got hurt, if there was a real emergency, there was nothing she could do. Sarah fed more wood into the stove and watched the flames dance. Outside, the wind screamed like something dying. The temperature on the thermometer read -20 and was still falling. She checked on the girls one more time. Emma was coughing softly in her sleep. Just a cold, Sarah told herself. Kids get colds all the time, it's nothing. But somewhere deep in her gut, in the part of her that had kept her alive through 3 tours of combat, a warning bell began to ring. Sarah woke to the sound of coughing. She was on the couch, still dressed, having dozed off while keeping watch over the wood stove. The clock on the mantel read 1:47 a.m. The second night of the storm. Outside, the blizzard continued its relentless assault, the wind howling like wounded animals. The coughing came again, harsh, wet, desperate. Sarah was on her feet and moving before she was fully awake, her combat instincts firing. She grabbed the flashlight and rushed to the girl's bedroom. Emma was sitting up in bed, doubled over, her small body racked with coughs that sounded like they were tearing her apart from the inside. Even in the dim light, Sarah could see her daughter's face was flushed deep red. "Baby, it's okay, Mommy's here." Sarah put her hand on Emma's forehead and jerked it back. Her daughter was burning up. She found the thermometer in the bathroom, hands shaking as she fumbled with it in the lamplight. She placed it under Emma's tongue, counting the seconds, praying. 104.2 degrees. Sarah's medical training kicked in automatically. She'd treated fever in the field dozens of times. Keep the patient cool. Hydrate. Monitor for signs of complications. She stripped Emma down to her underwear despite her daughter's protests of being cold, got children's ibuprofen from the medicine cabinet, coaxed Emma to swallow it with water. "Mommy, I'm freezing," Emma whimpered, her teeth chattering. "I know, sweetheart, I know, but we need to get your fever down." Sarah dampened a cloth with cool water and placed it on Emma's forehead. "You're going to be fine. This is just a bug." But even as she said it, Sarah's gut was screaming that this was something more. She checked the thermometer again at 2:15 a.m. 104.7 degrees. The ibuprofen wasn't working. Emma's breathing had changed too, faster, shallower, like she couldn't get enough air. Sarah lifted her daughter's pajama top and pressed her ear to her back, listening. She heard crackling in the lungs, the unmistakable sound of fluid where there should be only air. Pneumonia. Sarah had seen it in Afghanistan, had evacuated soldiers with it. In a hospital with antibiotics and oxygen, it was treatable. Out here, isolated with no way to get help, with the temperature outside dropping to levels that could kill in minutes. "Mama," Lily's sleepy voice came from the other bed. "Why is Emma coughing?" "She's okay, baby. Go back to sleep." But Emma wasn't okay. By 2:30 a.m., her fever had climbed to 105.1 degrees. Her lips were turning blue at the edges, cyanosis, lack of oxygen. Sarah ran through her options with the cold, analytical precision she'd learned in tactical planning sessions. The hospital was 15 miles away, but it might as well have been 1,500. The road was buried under 10 feet of snow. Even if she could somehow dig out, the bridge was gone. No vehicle could make it through. She tried her cell phone again. No service. The landline was still dead. She was completely cut off from the outside world with a critically ill child and no way to call for help. Sarah paced the small bedroom, her mind racing. She'd extracted soldiers from firefights, had navigated through sandstorms and enemy territory, had faced death and won. But this, watching her own daughter struggle to breathe, unable to do anything to help her, this was a different kind of terror. At 3:00 a.m., Emma started coughing again, and this time blood speckled the tissue. Sarah's hands went numb. Blood in the sputum meant the infection was severe, possibly damaging the lung tissue. Without immediate medical intervention, without antibiotics and oxygen. No, she couldn't let herself think that way. "Mommy, is Emma going to die?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with the awful clarity children sometimes have. "No," Sarah said fiercely, pulling Lily into a hug. "No, baby, Emma is going to be fine. Mommy's going to make sure of it." But how? How was she supposed to save her daughter when she couldn't even call 911? Sarah bundled Emma in blankets. She needed to keep her warm even while trying to cool the fever. It was a delicate balance. She gave her more medicine, made her sip water even though Emma barely had the strength to swallow. She monitored her breathing, counting each labored breath, watching the blue tinge spread from her lips to her fingertips. By 3:30 a.m., Emma's fever hit 105.8 degrees. Sarah knew from her medical training that sustained fevers above 105 could cause brain damage, could cause seizures, could kill. Her daughter was dying. Right here in her arms, miles from help, Emma was dying. The storm outside mocked her with its fury. She looked out the window at the wall of white, at the impossible barrier between her and the help her daughter desperately needed. Even if she tried to carry Emma through the storm, they'd freeze to death within minutes. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away. There was no way out. Sarah felt something breaking inside her, the careful control she'd maintained since Jake's call, the calm facade she'd put on for the girls. She was helpless. After all her training, all her missions, all the lives she'd saved, she couldn't save her own daughter. Then Emma coughed again and Sarah saw more blood. Her daughter's breathing was becoming rapid and shallow, tachypnea, a sign the body wasn't getting enough oxygen. Emma's eyes were glassy, unfocused. She was slipping away. "No," Sarah whispered, then louder, "no." She'd been in impossible situations before. She'd flown through scenarios that should have killed everyone on board. She'd found solutions when there weren't supposed to be any. She'd earned the call sign Falcon by seeing things others missed, by finding ways out when there was no way out. There had to be something, some option she wasn't seeing. Her mind raced through possibilities, through protocols, through every piece of training she'd ever received. What were her assets? What did she have that could reach the outside world? Then it hit her. The radio. The old military radio in the garage. The one Jake had wanted to throw out a dozen times. The one she'd kept because some part of her couldn't let go. Military frequencies were monitored, always. Even now, even in this storm, someone somewhere was listening. Sarah looked at Emma, her precious daughter, struggling for each breath. She looked at Lily, terrified and watching. She thought of Jake, trapped in town, not knowing his daughter was dying. She'd sworn she'd left that life behind. She'd promised herself she was done being Falcon, done with the military, done with all of it. But if there was even a chance, even the smallest possibility that someone might hear her. Sarah kissed Emma's burning forehead. "Hold on, baby. Mommy's going to get help. I promise, just hold on." She turned to Lily. "Stay with your sister, keep her warm, I'll be right back." Then Sarah grabbed her flashlight and ran for the garage. The garage was freezing, Sarah's breath coming out in white clouds as she tore through boxes with desperate hands. Christmas decorations crashed to the floor. Camping gear scattered. Her flashlight beam swept across forgotten relics of her old life. Her flight jacket, still hanging on a hook, her helmet bag, photographs from Afghanistan she couldn't bear to look at but couldn't throw away. Where was it? Where the hell was it? Come on," Sarah muttered, throwing aside a box of Emma's baby clothes. Her hands were shaking, from cold, from fear, from the weight of what she was about to do. Then she saw it. The radio case was buried under a tarp in the back corner, covered in 5 years of dust and spiderwebs. Sarah dragged it out, her heart pounding. The case was heavier than she remembered, military-grade hard plastic designed to survive combat conditions. Her fingers fumbled with the latches, numb from cold and adrenaline. The latches popped open. Inside, the ANPRC 152 radio looked exactly as she'd left it. Compact, ruggedized, capable of reaching distances that civilian radios couldn't dream of. Sarah had used this exact model to coordinate medevac flights, to call in air support, to save lives when every second counted. "Please work, please God, let it still work." She grabbed the radio and the portable power supply, running back into the house. Lily was still sitting with Emma, holding her sister's hand. Emma's eyes were closed, her breathing ragged and wet. "I'll be right in the living room, girls. I'm getting help." Sarah set up the radio on the kitchen table with hands that had steadied thousands of pounds of helicopter in combat, but now shook like leaves. She connected the power supply to the emergency generator, said a prayer, and flipped the switch. Nothing happened. No. Sarah checked the connections, checked the battery, her military training warring with rising panic. She'd maintained this equipment 1,000 times. She knew every switch, every. The power light flickered, then glowed green. Sarah almost sobbed with relief. She adjusted the frequency dial with practiced precision, tuning to 243 megahertz, the international emergency frequency monitored by military installations across the country. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory from another lifetime taking over. She picked up the handset, pressed the transmit button, and for the first time in 5 years, she spoke the call sign she'd sworn she'd never use again. Any station, this is Falcon." Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard and tried again, forcing the calm, controlled tone she'd used to guide soldiers through chaos. Any station, this is Falcon. I have a medical emergency. Child, age 6, critical condition. Pneumonia suspected, fever 105.8 degrees, blood in sputum, respiratory distress. Requesting immediate medevac. Coordinates 47.2 degrees north, 110.8 degrees west. How copy? Static answered her. Sarah waited 10 seconds, 30, a minute. Nothing but the hiss of empty airwaves and the howl of the storm outside. She transmitted again. Any station, this is Falcon. I have a medical emergency, child critical, requesting immediate medevac. How copy? More static. Maybe no one was listening. Maybe the storm was blocking the signal. Maybe she was screaming into the void while her daughter died in the next room. Sarah checked on Emma, still breathing but barely. She returned to the radio and transmitted again. And again. Every 10 minutes she repeated the same message, her voice growing more desperate with each call. At 2:47 a.m., 73 miles away at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Airman First Class Tyler Rodriguez was contemplating the profound unfairness of the midnight shift. At 22 years old, fresh out of technical school, Rodriguez had drawn the short straw, overnight communications monitoring in the middle of a blizzard that had shut down half of Montana. For 4 hours, he'd listened to weather reports, routine check-ins, and mostly static. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. His eyes burned with fatigue. Then a woman's voice cut through the static, and Tyler Rodriguez sat up so fast he nearly knocked over his coffee. Any station, this is Falcon." Rodriguez's hand froze over his keyboard. Falcon. That call sign meant something. He'd heard it somewhere before, in training maybe, in the stories the old-timers told. The transmission ended. Rodriguez scrambled for his training manual, fingers flying across the computer. Emergency frequency. Medical emergency. Child critical. He started logging the information, following protocol, but something about that call sign wouldn't leave him alone. Falcon, why did he know that name? The transmission came again. Same voice, same call sign, but Rodriguez could hear the fear underneath the professional calm now. This wasn't a drill. This was real. He pulled up the military database and typed in Falcon call sign. The screen populated with results. Rodriguez clicked the first one and felt his blood run cold. Captain Sarah Martinez. Call sign Falcon, Black Hawk pilot, 3 combat tour, Distinguished Flying Cross, Purple Heart, retired 2018. Status, civilian. Rodriguez had heard the stories. Every communications specialist at Malmstrom had heard the stories. The pilot who flew a dying Black Hawk through a sandstorm to extract 12 Special Forces operators. The video they showed in training. The legend who'd made the impossible look routine. That Falcon was calling for help. Rodriguez grabbed his phone with shaking hands and called his supervisor, Technical Sergeant James Morrison. The phone rang once, twice. "Rodriguez, this better be. Sir, you need to get down here, now. It's 300 hours, unless the base is under attack." "Sir," Falcon just broke radio silence. There was a long pause, then, "Say again." "Falcon, sir. Captain Sarah Martinez. She's on the emergency frequency requesting immediate medevac for a critical pediatric patient. Coordinates put her in Harrison County. Sir, she's calling from her home and she's using her old call sign." Rodriguez heard Morrison moving, heard the rustle of clothes being thrown on. "I'm 2 minutes out. Keep her on the line. Do not lose that signal." "Yes, sir." Rodriguez keyed his own microphone. "Falcon, this is Malmstrom Air Force Base Communications. We copy your transmission. Stand by." 73 miles away, in a house being hammered by the worst blizzard in Montana history, Sarah Martinez heard those words and felt hope flood through her veins like fire. "Malmstrom, Falcon copies, standing by." Her voice broke. "Please hurry, my daughter is dying." Rodriguez looked at the storm data on his screen. Wind gusts hitting 70 miles per hour, visibility 0, temperature minus 30 degrees. Flight conditions rated as impossible. He keyed the mic anyway. "Falcon, help is coming, stay with us." He just hoped it was a promise they could actually keep. Technical Sergeant James Morrison burst through the communications center door at 2:51 a.m., still buttoning his uniform shirt. At 43 years old, with 19 years in the Air Force, Morrison had seen his share of emergencies. But the expression on Rodriguez's face told him this was different. "Play it back," Morrison ordered. Rodriguez hit the playback. Sarah's voice filled the room, professional and controlled, but with an undercurrent of terror that made Morrison's chest tighten. Any station, this is Falcon. I have a medical emergency. Child, age 6, critical condition." Morrison listened to the entire transmission, then listened again. His mind was already running through protocols, regulations, chain of command procedures. Using military assets for civilian rescue required authorization from higher up. The weather conditions made flight nearly suicidal. The liability issues alone were a nightmare. "But that call sign." "Pull up everything we have on Captain Martinez," Morrison said quietly. Rodriguez's fingers flew across the keyboard. The file that appeared on screen was marked with commendations and classified mission reports. Morrison scanned through it, his expression growing more grave with each line. 3 combat tour, 487 missions flown, participated in Operation Enduring Freedom, led the extraction of 12 operators under fire during the Helmand River incident, recommended for the Silver Star, retired honorably in 2018 after sustaining injuries including. Morrison stopped reading. He picked up the secure line and dialed a number he'd never thought he'd use at 3 a.m. The phone rang 4 times before a voice answered, sharp with authority despite the hour. "Colonel Hendricks." "Ma'am, this is TSGT Morrison in communications. I apologize for the hour, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." "Go ahead, Morrison." He explained quickly, concisely, the way the military trained you to deliver bad news. Emergency transmission on guard frequency. Civilian calling for medevac. Pediatric patient, critical condition. Coordinates placing her in Harrison County, 15 miles outside of Great Falls, completely cut off by the storm. "Route it through the county emergency services," Hendricks said. "We're not cleared for civilian rescue operations, especially not in these conditions. You know that." "Yes, ma'am, but there's something else." Morrison took a breath. "The civilian is Captain Sarah Martinez, retired, call sign Falcon." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Morrison thought the connection had dropped. "Ma'am, you're certain it's her?" "Voice authentication is in progress, but the call sign, the coordinates matching her last known address, the professional terminology. Yes, ma'am, I'm certain." Another long pause. Morrison could almost hear the colonel thinking, weighing protocols against the reality that one of her former pilots was begging for help while her child died. "What are the flight conditions?" Hendricks asked finally. Morrison glanced at the weather display. "Inadvisable, ma'am. Wind gusts to 70, visibility 0, temperature minus 30. No civilian aircraft are flying. Even our training flights are grounded." "Inadvisable or impossible?" Morrison understood what she was really asking. We've flown in worse, ma'am, during combat operations. The last time you checked, Sergeant, we're not in a combat zone. No, ma'am, but Falcon never left anyone behind. Seems wrong to leave her behind now. He heard Hendricks exhale slowly. I need 5 minutes. Keep her on the line. Tell her help is being evaluated. The line went dead. Rodriguez transmitted the update to Sarah while Morrison made 2 more calls, one to the base flight operations, one to the standby medevac crew. Within 3 minutes, the communications center started filling with people who shouldn't have been there at 3 a.m. but were showing up anyway. Colonel Hendricks arrived at 3:08 a.m., still in her flight jacket from her own service days. She listened to Sarah's transmissions, read the weather reports, studied the maps. Morrison watched her face and saw the exact moment she made her decision. Here's what's going to happen, Hendricks said, her voice carrying the weight of command. I'm authorizing a search and rescue operation under emergency provisions. We launch one Black Hawk with a full medevac crew. The flight is voluntary only. I won't order anyone into conditions like this. If we can't find volunteers, we scrub the mission and I take the heat for trying. She looked around the room. Understood. Yes, ma'am. Good, Morrison, get me a crew. 10 minutes later, 7 pilots, 3 crew chiefs, and 4 flight medics were crammed into the briefing room. Morrison stood at the front, weather maps projected on the screen behind him showing the massive storm system that was currently tearing Montana apart. Gentlemen, ladies, here's the situation. We have a retired Army captain requesting emergency medevac for her 6-year-old daughter. Suspected pneumonia, critical condition. The patient is located here, he pointed to the map, 15 miles outside Great Falls, completely inaccessible by ground. Roads are gone, bridges are out, county emergency services can't reach her. He paused, letting that sink in. Flight conditions are beyond our normal operational parameters. This is voluntary. Anyone who wants to walk away now. No judgment, no consequences. Nobody moved. Morrison took a breath. The pilot requesting assistance is Captain Sarah Martinez, call sign Falcon. The room erupted. The Falcon. The Helmand River pilot. Holy shit, she's in Montana. Morrison raised his hand for silence. Yes, that Falcon. She's out there right now, watching her daughter die, and she's calling for help using a frequency she probably swore she'd never use again. So I'll ask one more time, who's willing to fly? Every hand in the room went up. But then someone pushed through from the back. Warrant Officer Marcus Chen, 34 years old, with the kind of intense focus that made junior officers step aside. He'd been assigned to Malmstrom for 6 months, a routine posting after years flying combat missions. Sir, request permission to lead this mission. Morrison checked his roster. Chen, you're not on the duty roster tonight. No, sir, but Falcon was my pilot in Afghanistan for 3 years. She saved my life twice, once in Helmand Province, once in Kandahar when our bird took an RPG, and she somehow kept us in the air long enough to reach friendly territory. Marcus's jaw was set, his eyes hard. She lived by one rule, no one gets left behind. That includes her. The room had gone completely silent. Morrison looked at Colonel Hendricks, who had been watching from the doorway. She nodded once. Chen, you've got the mission. Pick your crew. Marcus turned to face the assembled personnel. I need a co-pilot who won't freeze when we're flying blind through a blizzard. I need a crew chief who can rig a hot extraction in 90 seconds. And I need a flight medic who can stabilize a critical pediatric patient in the back of a bouncing helicopter. Lieutenant Amy Park stepped forward first. I'm your co-pilot. I flew with Falcon during her last tour. She taught me half of what I know. Staff Sergeant Deshaun Williams was next. Flight medic, I've got 2 daughters myself. Let's go get hers. The crew chief who volunteered was Sergeant Danny Ortiz. the same Ortiz who'd flown with Sarah on the Helmand River mission. "Falcon kept me alive in Afghanistan," Ortiz said quietly. "Time to return the favor." Marcus looked at his assembled crew and felt something shift in his chest. They weren't just flying a mission. They were bringing family home. "Brief in 5, wheels up in 20, he said. "Let's bring Falcon and her daughter home." Black Hawk sat on the tarmac like a crouched predator, rotors already spinning, snow swirling in the rotor wash. Marcus Chen ran through his pre-flight checks with mechanical precision, but his hands were steadier than they'd been in months. This was what he'd trained for. This was why he'd stayed in after Afghanistan, for moments when all the training, all the experience, all the close calls mattered. "Weather update," Lieutenant Amy Park said from the co-pilot seat, reading from the display. "Wind gusts now at 72 miles per hour. Visibility quarter-mile and deteriorating. Temperature -32. They're recommending we scrub." Marcus glanced at her. "They can recommend all they want. We're going." In the back, Staff Sergeant Deshaun Williams was securing medical equipment. Oxygen, IV bags, medications, warming blankets. Everything he'd need to stabilize a 6-year-old with pneumonia, if they could reach her in time. Sergeant Danny Ortiz finished his safety checks and plugged into the internal comms. "Crew chief ready. All systems green. But boss, I gotta say, I've never seen conditions this bad." "You flew Helmand River with Falcon and me," Marcus reminded him. "That was different. We had incoming fire to worry about, not just weather." "Weather can kill you just as dead as bullets." Marcus completed his final checks. "Tower, this is Hawk 7 requesting immediate departure clearance." "Hawk 7 Tower, be advised conditions are beyond safe operational parameters. Recommend you hold." "Tower Hawk 7, we have a critical medevac, request clearance." A pause, then, "Cleared for immediate departure Hawk 7, Godspeed." Marcus pulled collective, and the Black Hawk lifted into the teeth of the storm. The moment they cleared the airfield, the world went white. "I've got 0 visibility," Park called out, her voice tight. "Switching to instruments only." Marcus had flown in bad weather before, sandstorms that could strip paint, monsoons that turned the sky into a waterfall. But this was different. The snow didn't just reduce visibility, it eliminated it. The helicopter shuddered as wind slammed into them from the side, trying to flip them over. "Wind shear," Park shouted, "compensating." Marcus fought the controls, feeling the Black Hawk buck beneath him like something alive and angry. Every instinct screamed at him to land, to turn back, to abort this suicide mission. But somewhere ahead in the darkness, Falcon was waiting. Falcon, who'd flown him through worse. Falcon, whose daughter was dying. "Ortiz status," Marcus called. "Airframe holding. Some ice forming on the rotors, but nothing critical yet. Visibility from back here is absolute 0. Marcus checked their position. They'd been in the air for 3 minutes and traveled maybe 2 miles. At this rate, reaching Sarah would take 40 minutes. Did they have 40 minutes? "Hawk 7, this is Malmstrom comms," Rodriguez's voice crackled through. "Falcon is asking for your status." Marcus keyed the external frequency, the one he knew Sarah would be monitoring. "Falcon, this is Hawk 7. We are airborne and en route to your position. ETA approximately 35 minutes. How's your patient?" Sarah's voice came back immediately, and Marcus's heart clenched at the sound. 5 years since he'd heard it, but it was unmistakable. "Hawk 7, Falcon, patient critical. Fever 106, respiratory distress increasing. I don't know if we have 35 minutes. "Then we'll get there faster. Stand by." Marcus pushed the Black Hawk harder, increasing airspeed despite the conditions. The helicopter screamed in protest, ice building on the airframe, wind trying to tear them apart. Beside him, Park's knuckles were white on the controls. "Altitude alert," she called out. "We're drifting low." Marcus checked the radar altimeter. They were barely 200 feet above the ground, threading through mountain terrain in 0 visibility. One mistake, one missed calculation, and they'd slam into a mountainside at 140 miles per hour. "There's a canyon coming up," Park said, reading the terrain map. "We need to climb to clear it." "Can't climb in this wind, we go through." "Marcus, the canyon's only 300 feet wide." Falcon flew tighter gaps under fire. "We can do this." He banked the helicopter, dropping even lower, using the GPS and terrain radar to navigate through a canyon he couldn't see. The wind howled through the narrow space like a living thing, bouncing them off the walls of air. Warning alarms shrieked. Ice cracked off the rotors with sounds like gunshots. "We're not going to make it," Park said, her voice steady despite the fear. "Yes, we are. We have to." They shot out of the canyon with inches to spare, the Black Hawk rising into clearer air above the ridgeline. Marcus allowed himself one breath of relief before the next challenge hit. "Hawk 7, Malmstrom. Be advised, we're showing a weather cell intensifying over your target area. Conditions are going to get worse before you arrive." "Copy that, continuing approach." 15 minutes into the flight, they hit the worst of it. The wind caught them broadside with such force that the Black Hawk tilted 45 degrees. Alarms screamed. Equipment shifted in the cargo bay. For one terrifying moment, Marcus thought they were going over. "Recovering," he shouted, fighting the controls with every ounce of strength. The Black Hawk shuddered, groaned, then slowly, impossibly, leveled out. "Jesus," Ortiz breathed from the back. "Boss, we can't take many more hits like that." But Marcus was looking at the GPS. They were 12 miles out, 12 miles from Falcon, 12 miles from a dying little girl who needed them. "Falcon, Hawk 7, 15 minutes out. Talk to me about your landing zone." Sarah's response came back, her voice strained. "I've placed flares in a circular pattern in the field north of my house. Wind has covered some of them, but they should still be visible. Field is approximately 200 feet by 100 feet, surrounded by trees. No power lines, no obstacles. Surface is snow-covered, depth unknown." "Copy that. How's Emma?" A pause. When Sarah spoke again, Marcus heard something he'd never heard in all their time flying together. He heard Falcon braking. "She stopped breathing 2 minutes ago. I started CPR. Marcus, please hurry." The use of his name instead of his call sign told Marcus everything. This wasn't pilot-to-pilot communication anymore. This was Sarah, his friend, his mentor, the woman who'd saved his life, begging him to save her daughter. "Amy, give me maximum speed," Marcus said quietly. "We're already beyond safe limits." "I don't care about safe limits. Falcon needs us, now." Park hesitated for only a second, then pushed the throttle forward. The Black Hawk surged ahead, engines screaming, airframe shaking, warning lights illuminating the cockpit like a Christmas tree. 10 miles, 8 miles, 6 miles. "I've got a visual," Williams called from the back. "Flares at 11 o'clock, maybe 2 miles out." Marcus could see them now, faint orange glows in the swirling white, barely visible but there. A landing zone marked by a mother's desperation. "Falcon, Hawk 7, we have visual on your flares, beginning approach." "Hawk 7, Falcon, please," Sarah's voice broke completely. "Please save my baby." Marcus guided the Black Hawk toward those distant lights, his entire world narrowing to this single moment. The storm raged, ice cracked, alarms screamed. None of it mattered. "We're coming, Falcon," he said. 30 seconds, we're coming." Through the windscreen, he could see a figure in the field now, waving a flashlight frantically. Sarah, and in her arms a small bundle wrapped in blankets. "Landing zone in sight," Marcus called. "Ortiz, prepare for hot extraction. Williams, be ready to move the moment we touch down." "Roger that." "Amy, talk me down." "Altitude 100 feet, 50, ground effect. You're drifting left, correcting, 20 feet, 10 feet. The Black Hawk skids touched snow, sank deep, then held. "We're down," Marcus shouted. Ortiz threw open the side door, and Marcus saw Sarah running toward them through the blizzard, carrying Emma, her face a mask of terror and hope. They had made it. Now they just had to keep her daughter alive long enough to get her to a hospital. Sarah ran through waist-deep snow toward the Black Hawk, her legs burning, lungs screaming, Emma's lifeless body cradled against her chest. Behind her she could hear Lily crying, could feel the 4-year-old's hand clutching her jacket, trying to keep up. But all Sarah could focus on was the blessed sound of those rotor blades, the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. Move, move, move. Sergeant Ortiz jumped from the helicopter, fighting against the rotor wash and snow, reaching Sarah in seconds. His eyes went to Emma's blue-tinged face and Sarah saw recognition there. This was bad. "She's not breathing," Sarah shouted over the noise. "I've been doing CPR, but—" "We've got her." Ortiz took Emma from Sarah's arms with practiced gentleness. "Williams, critical patient, pediatric, not breathing." Staff Sergeant Deshaun Williams appeared in the cargo door, already moving before Ortiz finished speaking. He took Emma, laid her on the deck, and immediately began assessment while Sarah scrambled into the helicopter with Lily. "Airway obstructed, possible fluid in lungs," Williams called out, his hands moving with precision. "Starting suction. I need that oxygen now." The helicopter tilted dangerously as a wind gust slammed into them. Sarah grabbed a cargo strap to keep from being thrown across the bay, pulling Lily close. "We're sliding," Park's voice cut through the comms. "One skid sinking." Marcus throttled up hard, fighting to redistribute the weight. The Black Hawk groaned, tilted at a terrifying angle, the left skid buried deep in snow. For one horrible moment, Sarah thought they were going to flip. "Come on, baby," Marcus muttered, pulling collective, adjusting cyclic. "Come on." The Black Hawk shuddered, the rotor wash clearing snow beneath them, and suddenly they were lifting, tilting back to level. Marcus wasted no time. "We're out of here." Williams' status. Williams had a pediatric oxygen mask over Emma's face, bag valve resuscitator in his hands, squeezing rhythmically. Airway cleared, providing assisted ventilation, patient unresponsive, starting IV line for. The helicopter lurched violently. Williams grabbed the cargo strap with one hand, never stopping the breathing assistance with the other. Sarah watched in awe as he worked, one hand keeping her daughter alive while the aircraft bucked and shuddered around them. "Lily, buckle in right here," Sarah ordered, strapping her younger daughter into a jump seat. Lily's face was pale with terror, her eyes locked on her sister. "Is Emma going to wake up Mommy?" Sarah couldn't answer. She turned to Williams, who was inserting an IV into Emma's tiny arm while the helicopter pitched and rolled. "Got it," Williams said, tapping the IV in place. "Starting fluid resuscitation." "Sarah," he looked up at her, his eyes direct, "her temp is 106.3. Her oxygen sat is 72%. Her heart rate's 190. I'm doing everything I can, but she's critical. We need to get her to a hospital in the next 30 minutes or—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. "How long to Billings?" Sarah called to Marcus. 40 minutes in these conditions." "We don't have 40 minutes. "There's a regional medical center in Great Falls," Park said, checking her nav system. 22 minutes. "They have pediatric ICU?" Williams asked. "I don't know." Marcus made the decision. "Great Falls. Get them on the radio, tell them we're coming in hot with a critical pediatric patient, possible sepsis, respiratory failure. Have them ready." Sarah moved closer to Emma, kneeling beside Williams. Her daughter's face was gray, her lips still blue despite the oxygen. Sarah had extracted wounded soldiers, had performed battlefield first aid, had stayed calm through situations that would break most people. But watching her own child fight for every breath, she felt her carefully maintained control cracking. "Come on, baby girl," she whispered, taking Emma's small hand. "Stay with me, stay with Mommy." Emma's eyelids flickered. For just a second her eyes opened, unfocused, glassy but open. "That's it," Williams said. "Emma, can you hear me? Squeeze your mom's hand if you can hear me." Nothing, then, the faintest pressure against Sarah's palm. "She squeezed," Sarah's voice broke. "She squeezed my hand." "Good girl, Emma," Williams said, adjusting the oxygen flow. "You keep fighting, we're going to get you help." The Black Hawk hit turbulence so severe that Sarah was thrown against the bulkhead. Lily screamed. Equipment crashed around the cargo bay. Williams threw his body over Emma, protecting her as the helicopter dropped what felt like 100 feet before Marcus caught it. "Sorry," Marcus called back. "Downdraft off the mountains. Everybody okay?" "Still alive back here," Ortiz responded. "But let's not do that again." Sarah looked at Williams, who was checking Emma's vitals again, his face grim. "Temps up to 106.8, he said quietly, just to Sarah. "I've given her everything I can give her up here. The infection is moving fast. She needs antibiotics. She needs cooling measures we don't have. She needs." "How long can she hold on?" Williams met her eyes. "Honestly, I don't know. Every minute counts." Sarah turned to the cockpit. "Marcus, how fast can this bird go?" "Sarah, we're already pushing limits that." "I didn't ask about limits. I asked how fast." She heard Marcus exhale. Then, "Amy, give me emergency power." "Marcus, we'll burn out the engine." "Do it." The Black Hawk surged forward with a roar, the airframe shaking, the engine screaming in protest. Sarah felt the acceleration press her back against the bulkhead. Through the small window, she could see snow flying past in a white blur. 15 minutes to Great Falls, Park said. "Hospital's been notified. Trauma team standing by." 15 minutes. Emma just had to hold on for 15 more minutes. Sarah held her daughter's hand, watching the shallow rise and fall of her chest, counting each breath like it was precious. Because it was. Lily had climbed out of her seat despite Sarah's earlier order and was pressed against her mother's side, crying quietly. "Tell me a story, Mommy," Lily whispered, "like you tell Emma when she's scared." Sarah's throat was so tight she could barely speak, but she started anyway, her voice cracking. "Once upon a time, there was a brave little girl named Emma who was stronger than she knew." Williams worked steadily, monitoring vitals, adjusting oxygen, keeping Emma alive through sheer skill and determination. Ortiz stood by the door, ready for the hot extraction the moment they landed. In the cockpit, Marcus and Park fought the storm with every ounce of their combined expertise. And Sarah held her daughter's hand and prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. She prayed for just a few more minutes, just long enough to get Emma to help. 8 minutes, Park called out. Emma's breathing became more labored. Her oxygen saturation dropped to 68%. "She's crashing," Williams said urgently. "I'm losing her." "No," Sarah leaned over her daughter. "Emma, listen to Mommy. You fight. You hear me? You fight." Williams increased the oxygen, squeezed the bag faster, his training taking over. "Come on, Emma. Come on, sweetheart. Stay with us." 5 minutes, Park said. Emma's eyes opened again, found Sarah's face. For just a moment they were clear, focused. Her lips moved, barely a whisper. "Mommy." "I'm here, baby. Mommy's here. We're almost there. Just hold on." "I see the hospital," Ortiz called. "Landing pad at 2 o'clock." The Black Hawk banked hard, dropping fast toward the illuminated pad below. Sarah could see people waiting, doctors, nurses, a gurney, the trauma team. Marcus brought the helicopter down in a landing so smooth it felt like settling onto glass. The moment the skids touched, Ortiz had the door open. "Go, go, go." Williams scooped Emma into his arms, still maintaining the oxygen, and ran. Sarah grabbed Lily and followed, ducking under the rotor wash. Hands reached for Emma, transferring her to the gurney. A doctor was shouting orders: antibiotics, cooling measures, respiratory support, ICU prep. They rushed Emma through automatic doors that swallowed her into the fluorescent brightness of the emergency department. Sarah tried to follow, but a nurse stopped her gently. "Ma'am, you need to let them work. You can't go back there right now." "That's my daughter." "I know, and they're going to do everything they can, but you need to wait here." Sarah stood frozen in the hallway, still holding Lily, watching the trauma team disappear with Emma around a corner. The adrenaline that had kept her moving suddenly drained away, leaving her hollow and shaking. Strong hands gripped her shoulders. Marcus, his flight suit soaked with snow. "She made it, Sarah. She's alive. You got her here." "What if it's not enough? What if?" "No," Marcus's voice was firm. "No what ifs. You did everything right. Emma's a fighter just like her mom. She's going to make it." Sarah turned and collapsed against him, finally letting herself break. Marcus held her while she sobbed, Lily pressed between them, all three of them standing in that sterile hallway while somewhere deeper in the hospital, doctors fought to save Emma's life. They had made it through the storm. Now they just had to wait to see if they'd made it in time. The first 72 hours were hell. Emma spent 3 days in pediatric intensive care, her small body fighting an infection that had come terrifyingly close to ending her life. Sarah never left the hospital. She sat in that uncomfortable chair beside Emma's bed, watching monitors, counting heartbeats, memorizing the rhythm of the ventilator that breathed for her daughter. Jake had made it through on the 3rd day, when snowplows finally cleared the roads. He'd walked into Emma's ICU room looking 10 years older, pulled Sarah into his arms, and they'd both cried without words. Marcus visited every day, bringing coffee Sarah didn't drink and sitting in silence when words weren't enough. William stopped by during his off hours, checking Emma's charts with a professional eye, reassuring Sarah that the numbers were improving. Even Colonel Hendricks came, standing at the foot of Emma's bed with the weight of command temporarily set aside, just a woman grateful that a child lived. On the 4th day, Emma opened her eyes and asked for pancakes. Sarah laughed and cried at the same time, holding her daughter's hand as doctors confirmed what the monitors had been saying. Emma was going to be okay. The pneumonia was responding to antibiotics. Her fever had broken. Her lungs were clearing. She would need another week of hospitalization, then weeks of recovery at home, but she would live. "You scared me, baby girl," Sarah whispered that night, after Jake had taken Lily home for some real sleep. Emma looked at her with those serious 6-year-old eyes. "I heard the helicopter, Mommy. Even when I couldn't wake up, I heard it. I knew you were bringing help." "I had help from some very special people." "Were they your friends from when you were a soldier?" Sarah thought about Marcus throwing his Black Hawk into a storm that should have killed them all. About Williams fighting to keep Emma alive in impossible conditions. About Ortiz and Park and every person who'd risked everything for a child they'd never met. Yes, baby, the very best friends anyone could have. The story broke nationally within 48 hours. Retired combat pilot uses military call sign to save daughter in daring rescue. Black Hawk crew risks lives in blizzard medevac. Controversial military mission sparks debate on use of defense resources. The media descended on Great Falls. Some outlets praised the rescue as heroic. Others condemned it as misuse of military assets and taxpayer money. Congressional representatives called for investigations. Military protocol experts appeared on news shows debating whether the mission should have been authorized. Sarah watched it all from Emma's hospital room and didn't care about any of it. Her daughter was alive. That was the only thing that mattered. But Marcus cared. Williams cared. Park and Ortiz cared. They faced formal reviews, gave depositions, defended their actions to boards of inquiry. The scrutiny was intense, the political pressure enormous. Then something unexpected happened. Veterans groups rallied. Active duty pilots across the country spoke out in support. Social media exploded with Falcon strong and no one left behind. Letters flooded congressional offices. from mothers whose children had been saved by military medevacs, from soldiers whose lives Falcon had saved in Afghanistan, from ordinary citizens who believed that saving a dying child was exactly what the military should do. The official review took 6 weeks. In the end, Colonel Hendricks received a formal reprimand for authorizing an operationally questionable mission. The reprimand came with a private commendation from a 3-star general who told her off the record, "You made the right call. Don't ever doubt it." Marcus and his crew received official letters in their personnel files noting deviation from standard protocols under extreme circumstances. They also received the Airman's Medal for heroism, presented at a ceremony that made national news. 6 months after that terrible night, Sarah stood in her dress uniform on Malmstrom Air Force Base for the first time in 5 years. She'd been invited to the ceremony honoring the rescue crew, though she'd initially declined, feeling that their recognition shouldn't be about her. Marcus had called her personally. "You don't get it, Sarah. This isn't about recognition. This is about family. You show up for family." So she'd shown up, Jake and the girls beside her, watching as Marcus, Williams, Park, Ortiz, and Rodriguez received their medals. When it was over, Colonel Hendricks, now preparing for retirement, approached Sarah. "Captain Martinez, the Air Force has a question for you." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Ma'am." "We're experiencing a shortage of experienced Black Hawk pilots and instructors. We'd like to offer you a position as a civilian contractor, part-time instruction, consulting on flight operations, sharing your expertise with the next generation." Hendricks paused. "You'd still have your family time, still have your ranch, but you'd also have your wings back if you want them." Sarah looked at Emma, healthy and laughing, chasing Lily around the ceremony area. She looked at Jake, who smiled and nodded. She looked at Marcus, who gave her the same thumbs up he'd given her 100 times over Afghanistan. "I'd be honored, ma'am." The paperwork took 2 months. Sarah's first day back was a Tuesday, crisp and clear. She walked into the flight briefing room wearing a civilian instructor badge, faced a room full of young pilots who'd grown up watching videos of the Helmand River extraction, and felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. She felt complete. "My name is Sarah Martinez," she began. "Call sign Falcon, and I'm going to teach you what it really means to be a pilot, not just how to fly a helicopter, but how to bring people home when everything's going wrong and the mission should be impossible. Because that's what we do. We don't leave people behind. Ever." That night, Sarah sat on her porch with Jake, watching the sunset paint the Montana peaks gold and purple. Emma and Lily played in the yard, their laughter carrying on the wind. "Any regrets?" Jake asked. Sarah thought about the storm, about her desperate radio call, about watching Emma stop breathing. She thought about Marcus appearing through the blizzard like an avenging angel. She thought about the bond that had brought strangers through a killer storm to save her daughter, a bond she tried to leave behind but had never really broken. "No," she said finally, "no regrets. I spent 5 years trying to figure out who I was without the uniform, without the call sign, without the missions. Turns out I had it backwards." "How so?" "The question wasn't who I was without Falcon. The question was how to be Falcon and a mom, how to be a warrior and build a family, how to honor both parts of myself instead of choosing one over the other." Jake pulled her close. "And now?" Sarah smiled, watching her daughters play, feeling the weight of her new instructor badge in her pocket, remembering the look on Marcus's face when she'd agreed to come back. "Now I understand what Marcus told me 5 years ago. Once a Falcon, always a Falcon. It's not just a call sign. It's who I am at my core, someone who shows up when people need help, who fights through impossible situations, who never leaves anyone behind." She paused. "I tried to leave that behind because I thought being a good mother meant leaving the warrior behind. Turns out being a good mother sometimes means being both." Emma ran up to the porch, breathless and grinning. "Mommy, will you teach me to fly helicopters when I grow up?" Sarah pulled her daughter onto her lap, this precious child who'd come so close to being lost. Baby girl, I'll teach you anything you want to learn. But flying isn't just about helicopters. It's about being brave enough to help people even when you're scared. It's about showing up for the people who matter. It's about never giving up, even when everything seems impossible. Like when I was sick and you saved me. Like when you were sick and we all saved you together. Because that's what families do, military families, blood families, all families. We show up for each other. We fight for each other. We bring each other home. Emma nodded solemnly, then ran back to play with Lily. Jake squeezed Sarah's hand. Think they'll ever understand how close we came to losing her? Maybe not, but they'll understand what it means to be strong, to fight, to never give up. Sarah looked at the darkening sky where somewhere out there, Black Hawks were flying night training missions. And they'll know that when you call for help, family answers, no matter how far they have to fly, no matter what storm they have to face. Somewhere in the distance, Sarah heard the distinctive thump of rotor blades. She smiled, recognizing the sound that would always mean home, safety, and family. Once a Falcon, always a Falcon. Some call signs don't just identify you, they define the warrior you are and the legacy you'll leave behind. And that never changes, no matter where life takes you. It's there waiting when you need it most, ready to lift you through the darkest storms and carry you home. Sarah had finally found her landing zone, not by choosing between her past and her future, but by embracing both, by being Falcon and mom, warrior and teacher, survivor and hero, by being exactly who she was always meant to be. The E&D Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.